Believe it or not, PlayStation has a lot of respect for FromSoftware. Now, the news that came out more recently about Shuhei Yoshida pretty much leaving the PlayStation family, to me, I thought was, one that was, very sad, because I think this gentleman pretty much has been a very solid pioneer in gaming as a whole. One thing that stands out in all of the times that I got to see him, present stuff or talk about stuff, or I guess maybe one of the things that stood out, because he did some really cool stuff within the PlayStation ecosystem, was when he introduced Bloodborne. You can tell the amount of respect he had for, Miyazaki, and you could tell the amount of respect he had for their work. And this was in the PS4 days. There's a video clip of the first reveal of Bloodborne or something like that. And he talked about the team, and he talked about how he was excited that they made it happen. But now I think the tables are steering into a different place. I think PlayStation acquiring Kadokawa, to me, in terms of the gaming side, I think it's an all right proposition. I think it's actually okay. If they need somebody to acquire them and they want to, prevent a hostile takeover, as the news is saying, then perhaps it's appropriate that PlayStation is the one that, takes on them as a gaming firm. And maybe, as a Japanese company, they prefer that another Japanese company, be the custodian of their IPs and a lot of what it is that they do. That's fair. That's fine and dandy. I don't see anything wrong with that. Now, some folks see the anime scene as one that will take a hit because only Sony is going to be, for the most part, in control of a lot of those anime IPs after having acquired Crunchyroll. But this is the way, the tables fall. Is the hand that, we've been dealt in all of this. So I guess we're just going to have to see how this all plays out. But what I wanted to talk about today is FromSoftware's game making and game design philosophy. We know, every single one of us understands, that this is the one company that makes video games, for the most part, that are very antithetical to what you're going to see in PlayStation's own ecosystem. So think about the contrast between a game like Marvel Spider-Man or God of War Ragnarok or God of War 2018 and compare it to a game like Elden Ring. I have to say, as someone who played Elden Ring, it was my first FromSoftware game. I was not, a FromSoftware game player. When I saw the Dark Souls games, I thought they were cool, but I never would have picked up these games myself. And Elden Ring was one of those games that really did bring that mainstream appeal. And, it put me in a position where I was interested in actually getting, into it and playing it. At first, I didn't think I was going to like it. In fact, I refunded. I remember refunding this game and then going back to buy it. And one thing that I really did like about this game was very hardcore. It respected the gamer. It did not try to be pedantic. It didn't try to hold your hand. It did some really cool stuff. I'm thinking to myself, ladies and gentlemen, right? If this company goes into PlayStation's hands, is there going to be the scenario where PlayStation is making them to, make games that are similar to theirs? I think there's a scenario that actually happens that way. And now, I don't know if you guys are paying attention, a lot of the old guard in the PlayStation ecosystem seem to have pretty much, seem to be in a position where they're getting phased out. They're getting, they're retiring, they're leaving the company, maybe for other reasons. Perhaps there's something else that they need to deal with. But seeing the way PlayStation has made its games lately, there's just, especially with God of War Ragnarok, if that's going to be the gold standard, or Marvel Spider-Man 2, and then you think about a game like Elden Ring that is pretty much the opposing set of philosophies, I wonder how things are going to play out. And that's just from a game design philosophy, a game design perspective. Is Miyazaki going to be in a position where he can operate with little to no interference from, PlayStation's design philosophies? Are they going to be willing to actually, take lead from him, or allow for him to be able to do his work so that other PlayStation studios might be able to see how the FromSoftware paradigm works? These are very pertinent questions across the board. And for those who are in the Souls ecosystem, who are FromSoftware fans, how do you perceive this? Because you have these two schools of thought, or however many, which one of them is representative of what Miyazaki does and the other one is representative of what they do in Santa Monica and what they do in Naughty Dog and what they do in, say, Sucker Punch, of which Sucker Punch, they seem like they're going to be big fans at the end of the day. But how do you, interpret all of this, and how are we going to, as gamers, reconcile all of this at the end of the day? I think these are pertinent questions that anybody at the end, that's into this whole, conversation can ask. Because again, there is that side to the entire conversation. The second layer to this is PlayStation right now seems to have a lot of its hegemony in, the West. Well, there seems to be like some kind of an appeasement anyways, where they have two CEOs. One is from Japan and one is from the United States. Again, so this to me says, okay, maybe both, aspects of the company and investors will probably be at ease if they had, say, maybe a CEO that seemed to represent their interests. That's probably why you have a dual CEO going on. But then there's that. But you also have to think about it. How the Japanese think in their own approach for video games and in their own approach for culture and so on and so forth is not similar and cannot be juxtaposed to Western culture, and as well as the way Western developers, see and think about their games. So with all of this in mind, you also got to ask yourself and say, is FromSoftware going to have to follow suit with Sony's agenda with the way they actually make their other games? This is a very interesting question overall. These are some of the main things that need to be talked about as this particular merger is going into play. I see a lot of people, and I mentioned this in my last video, that are already positioned to do more console warring with this. But in reality, this is one of those developers that was absolutely very special. And, PlayStation right now and Sony seem to be taking a very interesting turn. Xbox and Microsoft are in the same place, by the way. I'm not saying that they are exempt. I'm just saying if you think about the way their philosophies work, it's just so different. I mean, let's say, for instance, a game like Stellar Blade. A game like Stellar Blade had Western journalists writing all kinds of crazy stories that had nothing to do with the quality of the game, that had nothing to do with the nature of the title and so on and so forth. And it just became really tedious to read about everything that was pertinent that did not talk about the quality of the game itself. The distractions were just so much. And it's weird at the end of the day that this is the focus right now for a lot of these gaming, journalists or gaming outlets. But at the end of the day, there seems to be an influence, or there seems to be a basic common thread across the board with not just, the games and the games writers, but the developers themselves. So how is this all going to gel together? Are the journalists all of a sudden going to then say, oh, well, because it's PlayStation and it's FromSoftware doing something, we're going to change the way that we actually address it? I think they will. That's how they usually roll. But these, questions and these concerns, I think they're going to come up later down the road. Now, for me, again, like I said, Elden Ring is the one FromSoftware game that I do like, and so maybe they'll make another Elden Ring game that I do like. I don't know, but some people are, into FromSoftware games. They are the ones that I think will be at the center of this conversation as everything starts to line up. But the merger hasn't happened yet. We don't know if it's going to close or if it's going to happen. It seems more likely than not. And I think we can go from there once things start to, pan out. We're about to see some really cool stuff with, FromSoftware having a lot of games, having worked under different circumstances. Perhaps they'll let them do their thing. I think they will, to be very honest with you. I think they're going to leave them, doing their own thing out there in Japan, and then, let the Western studios do their own thing. But who knows? Leadership might change. Philosophies might morph, and we might see the outcome be very different than we can even predict. Talk to me in the comment section, folks. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk in another one. Peace out.